The coffee shop door chimed as Daniel, a tired single father with worry lines far older than his 32 years, stepped inside. He carried the kind of exhaustion only a parent doing it all alone could understand. His daughter, Lila, was at school, her backpack mended with care, her shoes nearly too worn, her smile held together by the love he poured into her life. Daniel got his usual, the smallest coffee on the menu. He couldn't afford anything else. Across the room, a woman with soft, storm-gray eyes sat alone. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, yet her posture carried a grace he couldn't explain. She stared into the steam of her untouched latte like it carried memories she wished would disappear. That was when 3 sharply dressed men walked in, and everything changed. She looked up when the men approached her table, her shoulders tensing as if she expected trouble. Daniel felt it before it happened, the way fear radiated from her quietly, the way she shrank into herself. "Come on, Evelyn," one of the men said, his mocking voice slicing through the cafe. "Stop running. Just sign the contract. Your father would have wanted that merger." She didn't reply. She only shook her head, and that was enough for the man to yank her arm. Her latte tipped, splashing across the table. Before the cup could even hit the floor, Daniel was already standing, heart pounding, hands shaking, but stepping forward anyway. "That's enough," he said, voice steady despite the fear curling inside him. "Let her go." The men turned, sizing him up. "You know who she is?" The tallest one sneered. Daniel shook his head. "I don't need to know. You're upsetting her. Back off." The woman, Evelyn, met his eyes, shocked that someone who owed her nothing would stand up for her. A shove came next. Daniel stumbled but didn't retreat. "Walk away," the man hissed. "No," Daniel said. "You walk away." Something in his voice must have struck a nerve, because the men exchanged glances, muttered curses, and finally stormed out. The cafe exhaled with relief. Daniel turned to the woman. "You okay?" he asked, and she nodded, slowly, gratefully. You didn't even ask who I was," she whispered. Daniel shrugged. Didn't matter. But to Evelyn, it mattered more than he could imagine. She wasn't just Evelyn, she was Evelyn Hale, billionaire, CEO, daughter of the man whose empire those men wanted to take apart. That she'd been hiding from the corporate world that wanted to use her. Daniel just didn't know he defended the one woman whose life was more complicated than his own, and Evelyn didn't know she'd just met the man who would change hers. Evelyn couldn't forget him. A man who didn't want anything from her. A man who didn't treat her like she was a prize to chase. A man who simply cared. The next day, she found herself walking toward the small school playground where she saw a familiar figure. Daniel was helping fix a broken swing, his hands dirty, his clothes worn, but his smile genuine as Lila giggled beside him. Evelyn watched them quietly, her heart drawing toward something she hadn't felt in years: warmth. "Dad." Lila called. "Someone's watching us." Daniel turned, surprised to see Evelyn. "Hey, everything okay?" he asked. She hesitated, then spoke with vulnerability she rarely showed. "Can I talk to you? Just for a moment?" Lila ran off to play, leaving them alone. "I wanted to thank you again," Evelyn said softly. "Most people don't help without expecting something in return." Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm not most people." Evelyn smiled, not her practiced media smile, but a real, trembling one. "Would you believe me if I told you I'm not exactly who you think I am?" Daniel shrugged. "Doesn't matter who you are. You're someone who needed help." That simple sentence, so pure, so uncalculated, broke something open inside her. She sat on the bench beside him, her eyes drifting to Lila. "She seems happy." "She is," Daniel replied. "Even when life isn't easy." There was a pause. A deep one. Then she whispered, "I grew up with everything money could buy, except that." Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the weight she carried. "You ever wish you could just disappear?" she asked. Daniel laughed softly. "Every day." And Evelyn laughed, really laughed, for the first time in years. The story deepens. Long narrative begins. They talked for an hour, then 2. Then more. In the days after, Evelyn began showing up at the coffee shop. Not in fancy cars. Not in luxury clothes. Just as herself, and somehow, Daniel always knew when she needed a moment of peace that he never pried into her past. Never asked about her money. Never treated her like she was above him, that he treated her like she was enough, and in return, Evelyn found herself wanting normalcy. A life where someone cared about her heart, not her inheritance. One afternoon, as they walked Lila home, Evelyn finally told Daniel the truth. "I'm a Hale," she whispered. "The Evelyn Hale." Daniel stopped walking. "Wait, the billionaire who's been on every business magazine cover?" She nodded, bracing for him to pull away, but he didn't. He only said, "And?" Evelyn blinked. "That's it? You don't care?" He shook his head. "I care about you. I don't care about your money." The relief in her chest was so overwhelming she nearly cried, but trouble was coming. The same men who confronted her found out where she'd been hiding. They arrived one evening, threatening legal traps and hostile takeover tactics unless she surrendered control of her company. Daniel stepped between them again, this time unafraid, this time not alone, as neighbors came out to support him. Evelyn watched with awe as the man who had little still stood like he had everything. Her voice didn't shake when she finally declared, "You don't decide my life. I do. And I choose to fight." With Daniel's encouragement, she walked into a board meeting days later, calm, confident, and reclaimed her father's company with grace and authority. When she walked out, Daniel and Lila were waiting for her outside the building. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "You stayed." Daniel smiled. "We said we would." Ending message. Years later, people would say Evelyn Hale transformed her company with brilliance, but the truth, it was a single dad with calloused hands, kind eyes, and a heart full of resilience who taught her what true strength looked like. And Evelyn taught him that love finds you when you least expect it, usually in places as small and quiet as a coffee shop. Together, they built a life rooted in honesty, courage, and second chances. Because sometimes, the richest hearts come from the simplest lives.